to like this kind of thing. You know, like I'm so I gotta calm down. You know, like I trust you, but I'm just a little scared. But Brett Brown. We'll talk about this more in the next segment. Again, like he's a nice dude. Again, like tactician wise, I'm not sure about. Probably a good dude. Like nothing for nothing. Other than a certain guy who hangs out at Powerhouse and is probably in Alabama right now. You really haven't lost a guy.
No.
Like during Brett Brown's tenure, which is a good thing given everything.
But was it the cycle is to have this guy man the ship,
right?
And then get a real colonel or what's
admiral?
Yeah, get a better admiral to like take the ship to like different places.
Right. I mean, I think that was the problem. But then again, I mean, he's from the pop school, so maybe they thought that he would be the guy who would be here 10, 12 years, to be the guy who takes them from port all the way out. Would there be because that's the thing we have to worry about with the cult is, would there be a backlash if Brett Brown were fired at some point? If he was fired at some point, if he had a similar record this year than he did last year, because they have more talent. So if you go 10-72 again,
say he went 17-65
with this team,
yeah,
Ben doesn't come back.
No, he does come back
with Ben.
Yeah.
Oh no, you got to fire the dude. Like I mean, I like the dude, and I know he just got an extension by that.
Okay,
but we'll talk more about Ben in the next segment. About Brett, in the next segment, because I do have one more question before we take our first break. What current, again, given the climate, given everything that happened a couple of days ago in our nation, what current Philadelphia sports figure would make the best president? Because I thought about this for a while. I don't think there's a lot of guys who I would, put my faith in, who would be commander in chief.
Carson Wentz.
You would trust him to be your commander in chief.
Yes.
What is it about Carson F. Wentz? The F stands for Philadelphia. What would it be about Carson Wentz? What is it about Carson Wentz that makes him the best? Would make him the best candidate?
The fact that he shakes like your referee's hands at the beginning of the game and calls him sir. Like I saw, he's like, "Hello, sir." I mean, the most polite. I mean,
he's a polite guy.
Yeah, and we need polite.
So his politeness is why not. I mean, because again, if you want to say Carson Wentz, you can say, "Well, you know what? This dude has zero memory about anything. Like he shakes off bad stuff," which is kind of what you want in a leader. You don't want a leader to dwell. Right?
Can I just say nobody?
No, I mean, like, you can say nobody. Cause
I think for me,
if you had to pick a guy, like, my choice is probably Malcolm Jackson. Because he's a guy who kind of rallies the troops. Everybody believes in him. He's the leader of your team.
That's a good one.
I was going to leaders on.
I was going to say Matt Klentak.
No, I mean, Matt Klentak's legit. I mean, like, you don't
because don't you need an analytics base, like, I don't know, a data, like, I don't know, looking at the data, I'm going to make X decision.
Yeah, like, you get, like, presidents and people in power, they say, like, yo, cabinet dude, give me all the data. Let me sit down and figure this out. Let me make the best decision for American people. Matt Klentak would do that.
Because I would say Matt Klentak probably doesn't make decisions on emotion.
No. Well, he's not an emotional guy. You could probably say the same thing about Brian Colangelo. I mean, he's been in an hour. But, I mean, he's probably a guy who doesn't make decisions.
At least we didn't say someone else. At least he's not hearing it.
Current Philadelphia sports figures, because I know if I had brought that man's name up, you'd be very upset.
I would have not said ship.
You would not have said that. You just said another word, and I don't have a dump button, so I wouldn't have been able to bleep you. So we'll talk about that again. If anybody out there, if you have your own thoughts about this, hit us up on Twitter at the BS Line at SKD215, or check us out on Facebook as well, facebook.com/the BS Line. If there's a current Philadelphia sports figure, is there any current Philadelphia sports figure that you think would make a good president? Please let us know. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we will start our State of the Union. We'll talk some Flyers and Sixers, where they stand and where they're going to go. You're listening to the Broad Street Line, 106.5 WPPM LP Philadelphia.
Tonight, I just want to take you higher. Throw your hands up in the sky. Let's set this party on fire. Put your pinky rings up to the moon. Girls, what y'all trying to do? 24-karat magic in the air. Head to toe so clear. Look out. Pop, it's showtime. Showtime. Guess who's back again? Oh, they don't know. Oh, they don't know.
Welcome back to the Broad Street Line. Roy Burton, Chris Domingo, back with you here on 106.5 FM, WLP Philadelphia. Let's get back into it again. As we said on the other side, we were talking State of the Union. Where are we? Where's the state of the Philadelphia sports teams as we stand right now?
And Roy, I think we can, just to surmise this, I think most of the Philly teams are kind of in the same development stage.
Yeah, they're in a pretty good spot. We'll start with the winter teams now, and I think they're both in a similar spot. We'll start with the Flyers because we're going to talk a lot about the Sixers, so we'll save them for the second part of the segment. We'll start with the Flyers, and again, the Philadelphia Flyers, much like the Sixers, they're a very young team filled with a lot of young talent, which we'll discuss. But again, much like the Sixers, they haven't been to the playoffs since the 2011-2012 season. It's been a long drought for our winter teams when it comes to the playoffs.
Even though, and that's surprising because the Flyers were always, for the longest time, they went years, even decades for making the playoffs.
Actually, I'm sorry. I take that back. I'm not making the. They haven't got past the first round.
Yeah,
they weren't in the playoffs last year. They lost to the Capitals. They haven't got past the first round since the 2011. Well, the Sixers haven't got past the first round since then either. Since the 2011-2012 season. That's what I meant to say. Because last year they were 41-27-14. Of course, that was the first year of Dave Hackstall, not to be confused with Ron Hextall. Dave Hackstall, the coach from North Dakota. And a lot of people didn't think that was going to work out the way it did, but I'm a little bit surprised.
Yeah,
that Hackstall came in.
No, because that was a outside the box move for the Flyers because they're always they're a by the book team generally.
You're by the book team. You get the guy like the Bill Barbers, the Terry Murrays, the rest in peace Roger Nielsen's, like those kind of guys to be their coach. But they went out and got the best coach in college, Dave Hackstall, and again played pretty well last season in terms of the record, not as well as they wanted to, but they had a problem scoring. 22nd in scoring last year, 20th in the penalty kill. So they had an issue with that. Didn't exactly address it in the offseason, but they did kind of strike gold with the young kid, Travis Konechny, the 19-year-old. He's been a bit of a revelation this year for the Flyers. Of course, you have the same guys from last year who were holding it down. The homie G, Claude Giroux, still not a goal scorer, but he's probably the most prolific assist guy in the league. And, of course, you have Jake Voracek and Wayne Simmons who do your goal scoring. The guys that people are excited about with this team going forward.
Defensemen.
Yes. Two young stud defensemen. You got Ghost, Shane Gostisbehere, and Ivan Provorov, the young kid who made his debut this year. He's the more defensive defenseman. He's the guy, again, I've seen him a little bit. Again, he's the guy who basically just shuts down the breaks when he's on defense. Gostisbehere is your more offensive guy. So you have a couple guys who do a couple different things on defense. So you have a lot of young talent. You have other guys in G and Simmons and Voracek who aren't old. They're veterans, but they're not old. So you're in a good position going forward when it comes to those guys. But as you know,
with no bad contracts.
But as as we've said on this show before, the hardest thing for the Flyers to find, the thing the Flyers have rarely had in our lifetimes is,
except for Ron Hackstall.
Yes.
A top flight goalie.
Yeah. Steve Mason ain't that guy. He's been bad this year. Michael Norworth probably ain't that guy either.
And that's the thing, with no fault of them trying.
Right.
I mean, they've tried to trade for some. Yeah. They tried to promote from within. They just can't find it.
Can't find a guy. Haven't been able to find a guy since Ron Hextall. Ron Hextall. No, Ron Hextall's the guy. Not the Dominic Roussel's, not the Ray Emery's.
Because even when they made it to the finals, they didn't have. They were just so good offensively.
Right, like they were an offensive team. The problem is they're not that good offensively, and you have two guys who give up goals in the 3.5 goals against range. That's not. If you got to score 4 goals to win a game, and you got a team who doesn't score that many goals, you got a problem. You got an issue.
And of course, I think the answer is no. They will not be able to win without a goalie.
You got to have a goalie, man. You got to have a goal, and and you can't have a guy who just gets hot for a stretch because they've had that a little bit. You have to have a goalie who you can count on, a goalie who you can put out there, 60, 65 times, a season. You got to have that guy.
Yeah, no, I think it's just, and it's not like they've ignored it.
Right.
I mean,
they've tried.
They know the formula.
They know.
But it's just passed them by.
It's really I don't want to say it's sad, but it's kind of like because there's been a couple of years we're in recent times where if they had a goalie, if they had a type flight guy, they probably could have made a legit run. I mean, I know they made a run to the Stanley Cup Finals a few years ago, but I mean, like if they had a guy, they could have been an actual Stanley Cup champion or made a couple more Finals appearances. They still don't have that guy. I don't think they have that guy coming up in the farm system. I haven't heard much about him if they do, but they do have a couple of defensemen. They do have a bunch of guys who can score the puck, who can move the puck around. They're still missing that. I mean, they'll probably have to find a guy in free agency. Like you said, they're not really tied into too many contracts. But the Flyers, where they are, a lot of young talent, probably missing a piece. Not unlike the other winter team who plays their games at the center, if you will, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. The Flyers missing a goalie. The Sixers missing a point guard. But how do they get to where they are now? Well, again, much like the Flyers, they haven't made the playoffs.
Long, strange trip it's been.
Yeah, really. They haven't made the playoffs for such a since the They haven't made the playoffs since the 2011-2012 season, since Andre Iguodala was crotch chopping on top of tables. That, of course, led to the infamous Andrew Bynum trade, which led to 0 games of Andrew Bynum actually playing in Philadelphia, and that.
But endless articles about Andrew Bynum.
Gotta have because his hair was worth articles alone.
His salsa dancing,
the hair, the cartilage grown in petri dishes, as he said. The Andrew Bynum era was pretty special around here. Of course, that led to the acquisition of one Sam Hinkie, who was the former assistant of Daryl Morey down in Houston. He came in May 2013, and Hinkie and Morey are kind of known for their quote-unquote Moneyball style approach to the game. You weren't necessarily a fan of the approach, is that right? Is that fair?
Oh no, I could say to the level of the approach.
Okay,
the extremity of the approach, because I agree with the approach. It's just I don't want to say it because I don't know if this is a bad word or not. Just the lengths to which you are willing to execute the approach.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, because the approach, and in this case, Sam Hinkie's, is
the process.
Yeah, the process, as we'll call it, was let's acquire a lot of assets and let's maximize our chances to get really good assets, aka high picks and multiple picks if possible.
Which means being real bad.
And they were bad. They have been bad, and they continue to be bad because over the past, in the Sam Hinkie era, in the 3+ years Sam Hinkie was here, the Sixers won all of 47 games. Now, for those of you who aren't basketball fans this season, so they went 47 and 199 in the past. But during that process, they did make a few moves. They did acquire a lot of assets over time. They're trading Drew Holiday, wound up getting Nerlens Noel and getting a 2014 first-rounder. They also drafted Michael Carter-Williams, but he's gone now because they maximized his value. They moved him in a deal that got them the Lakers' partially protected first-round pick. They also drafted Joel Embiid and Elfrid Payton, who they moved for Dario Saric and another first-round pick. So, as you see, they've acquired a lot of guys, moved some of the guys they acquired, got a lot of picks. And over the past 2 years, they drafted Jahlil Okafor with a number 3 overall pick, and finally Ben Simmons after Hinkie resigned in 2016. So from an asset standpoint, I think Sam Hinkie did a pretty good job in getting a lot of assets.
But not a great job.
But in just getting assets.
Yeah.
Not necessarily guys who can play together, but in terms of working your picks and working the guys you have, like Michael Carter-Williams.
Absolutely.
Working Drew Holiday, flipping him for what you got. Like, I think he did a pretty good job in that aspect.
Absolutely.
You would agree with that. But again, not everything kind of worked out the way you thought it would. Michael Carter-Williams was supposed to be your point guard of the future. He's 6'7", couldn't shoot. So, ipso facto, therefore, Michael Carter-Williams got dealt again for that Lakers pick. You bring Jahlil Okafor in. Of course, you already have Nerlens Noel to see if they could play together. They couldn't. And not only that, Jahlil Okafor couldn't help himself. Got himself involved in multiple incidents away from the court. Actually, 2 incidents outside of nightclubs. One here, one in Boston. And, of course, he got caught speeding on the Ben Franklin Bridge and tried to use a fake ID as well. All in his rookie season, which he only played like 47 games because he got hurt. It was a really busy season for Jahlil Okafor.
And I think that was the one season that doomed Sam Hinkie.
And that was my question to you. The whole Jahlil Okafor situation, was that the number one indictment of the process? Because I know you've said on our show before, you said that Sam Hinkie doesn't always factor in the human element.
No.
So you think that's where he failed the most in terms of the process?
and one, I feel that if it was so analytics based,